Taring worked on Juno 9, a busy trade planet in the center of the Unity system. He was an engineer at the Galactic Unity office. His job was to keep the station's technology working. From scanners to transport lifts, if it broke, Taring was expected to fix it. Most days were long and full of problems. Some machines were old. Others had parts from different planets, which made repairs even harder. But Taring liked solving problems. He didn't mind the noise, the tools, or the pressure. What he did mind was how people treated each other. On Juno 9, humans often took the lead. Other species helped, but they were rarely in charge. Aliens were, usually seen as assistants or support staff. Some of them were smart and capable, but their voices were small in meetings. Taring never liked that. He believed work should be based on skill, not on where someone was born. One morning, Taring arrived early at his station. The air was warm, and the giant window showed a glowing red sunrise. Over the outer rings, he was going through system reports. When the office manager walked in, "You've got a new assistant starting today," she said. "They just arrived from Vela, quiet type, but they say she's efficient." Taring nodded, not looking up. "All right, I'll train her." A few minutes later, he heard a soft voice behind him. "Are you Taring?" He turned and saw her. She was tall and calm-looking, with smooth teal-colored skin. Her dark green eyes didn't flash or sparkle. They were steady and focused. She wore a plain silver uniform like the other workers, but it looked more graceful on her somehow. "I'm Mira," she said. Taring gave her a short nod. "Nice to meet you. You're early." "I prefer to see the work area before the rush," she said simply. Taring liked that answer. No extra words, just reason and action. He handed her a data tablet. "We're working on the scanner relays today. One is out of sync and giving false readings." Mira looked at the screen and traced the data flow with her finger. "The sync line isn't broken," she said. "It's delayed because of a temperature drift. The relay is sitting near the outer vent. It overheated." Taring paused. She was right. He had missed that. She had only looked at the system for 10 seconds. He felt a small smile form. "Good catch," he said. From that moment, Taring stopped seeing Mira as just an assistant. He watched her work throughout the day. She didn't speak much, but every time she spoke, it mattered. She read patterns fast, fixed problems quietly, and never bragged. She moved through the station like she belonged there, but didn't need to prove it. The other workers noticed her too, but not in the same way. One technician whispered to another, "That's Taring's new helper. He treats her like she's some queen or something." Taring heard that. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. He just handed Mira a tool and asked for her view on the next system. By the end of the week, Mira had solved 5 ongoing errors in the station's core relay room. Problems that had been logged for months but never fixed. Taring updated the report and listed her name beside his. When the report reached upper staff, they removed her name. They said it wasn't usual to list assistants. Taring walked straight into the manager's office and said, "Either you keep her name on the report, or remove mine too." The manager raised an eyebrow. "She's your assistant, Taring. Assistants don't go in the main line." "She's more than that," he replied, "and she deserves credit." After a long pause, the manager agreed to add her name back. It was a small thing, but Mira noticed. Later that day, as they sat near the repair bay, she looked at him. "You didn't need to fight for my name," she said. "I didn't fight," Taring replied. "I told the truth." Mira nodded. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. The next project they were assigned to was more complicated. It involved a planetary scanner that monitored trade signals coming in and out of the system. The scanner had been unstable for a month. 2 teams had failed to fix it. Taring and Mira were asked to take over. They climbed up to the top of the station, where the scanner arms turned slowly in the sky. The wind was strong, and the lights blinked in warning. The systems were delicate, and the control unit had over 20,000 connections. Taring opened the panel and frowned. "This is going to take hours." Mira said nothing. She placed her hand over the screen and began tracing the circuit lines again. After a moment, she spoke. It's not the scanner. It's the receiver line. A signal bounces returning every third wave, and the control unit thinks it's a fault. We can reroute the input and bypass the false error. Taring blinked. That's simple. And brilliant. He helped her make the adjustments. Within 30 minutes, the scanner was stable. The command center sent a message of thanks. But again, Mira's name wasn't mentioned later. While walking back to the core room, Mira said, "They'll always see me as your helper." Taring looked at her and said, "Only if we let them." From that day on, he never introduced her as his assistant. He said, "This is Mira. She's the engineer who fixed your systems." And each time someone looked confused or surprised, he didn't explain. He just kept working with her, side by side. What others called her didn't matter to him. He had seen something rare in her: calm wisdom, quiet power, and a mind that worked faster than most machines. To others, she might be a helper, but to Taring, she was something far more. Mira had been working with Taring for almost 2 weeks now. She never asked for attention. She didn't complain when others ignored her ideas. She simply continued to do her work. And every day, her value became more visible to Taring. In the Unity station, most people rushed. There were always messages to answer, repairs to make, and numbers to report. Some people fixed only what they could see. Others ignored problems that didn't cause alarms. But Mira was different. She noticed the small things that others missed. One morning, a transport pod arrived from a nearby mining colony. It carried several workers and a few crates of rare minerals. As it docked, the system lights flickered. No one thought much of it. But Mira paused. "There's something wrong with the pod's energy shield," she said. The dock team laughed it off. One of them said, "If it landed safely, there's nothing wrong." But Mira kept looking at the readings. She told Taring, "The shield is draining energy even after landing. That's not normal. It could cause a short circuit." Taring trusted her. He followed her to the dock and checked the readings himself. She was right. The pod shield was still active and pulling power from the station grid. If left alone, it could have triggered a power overload in the lower floors. They shut it down and avoided a serious accident. The report again listed Taring's name only. He corrected it, but no one said thank you to Mira. Later that day, as they repaired the ventilation control in Sector 6, Taring asked her, "Why do you always notice things others don't?" Mira answered without looking up, "On Vela, we are taught to listen before speaking, to look twice before acting. My people believe calm eyes see deeper." Taring nodded. "That explains a lot. Still, I think it's more than training. You have a gift." Mira didn't answer. She simply continued tightening the wires with her slender hands. That evening, during a maintenance meeting, the department head, Mr. Dellin, gave a long list of praise to teams across the station. He didn't mention Mira at all. After the meeting, one worker leaned toward Taring and said, "Your assistant must be making your life easier. Looks like she's earning her keep." Taring kept his voice calm. "She's not making my life easier. She's keeping this station running." The worker looked surprised. He laughed a little, but Taring didn't join in. Back at their shared workspace, Mira placed a small plant on the table. It was a soft green color with silver leaves. Taring looked at it. "What's that?" "It's a calming plant," Mira replied. "We grow them on Vela. I thought the station needed a little peace." Taring smiled. "Good choice." They worked quietly for a while. The only sound was the low hum of the station's core systems. Then, a new message arrived on Taring's screen. A large atmospheric filter in the agriculture sector had failed. Food production was at risk. They needed help fast. Taring and Mira went there together. The room was filled with tall green structures. Long pipes hung from the ceiling, and soft light shined down on the plants. But the air was too warm. One of the filters had stopped working, and heat was building up. The chief technician was already there, shouting orders. His team tried to restart the system, but nothing worked. "We'll lose the entire crop area," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Taring stepped forward. "Let us try." The technician sighed. "You've got 10 minutes. Taring opened the main panel, but the control board was dead. He checked the wiring. Nothing obvious was wrong. Mira stepped back and looked at the entire room. Then she walked to the far corner and touched a hidden fuse box. This panel connects to the emergency cooler. She said. The override was tripped when the main filter shut down. She flipped the fuse back, and the room lights blinked once. Then the cool air returned, slowly. The temperature began to drop. The technician stared. How did you know about that? Box, Mira said quietly. I read the room map on the way here. The technician gave a slow nod. You saved the crops. But still, the report that went to headquarters didn't mention her. Only Taryn's name appeared again. That night, Taryn sat at his desk and stared at the blank screen. Then he opened the report file and added a note at the top. This work was done by Mira Vela. Without her skill, the agriculture zone would have failed. She saw what others ignored. She acted when others waited. This success belongs to her. He sent the report with both their names. The next day, Mira entered the workspace and placed a second calming plant beside the first. It had blue leaves and a faint scent like rain. This one is for focus, she said. You're building a garden in here, Taryn said with a smile. She gave a small nod. Taryn leaned back in his chair. You know, people keep calling you my assistant, but I don't see you that way. What do you see me as? She asked. Taryn thought for a moment. As the person I trust most on this station. Mira looked at him, and for the first time, a real smile appeared on her face. She had never asked for praise or position, but in that moment, she knew Taryn saw her. Not just her work, but her worth, and that was something no report could measure. After a full month on Unity Station, Mira had become a quiet force that no one could ignore. She never spoke loudly, never rushed, and never tried to impress anyone. But her work spoke for itself. Every system she touched ran better. Every problem she studied was fixed faster. She had become the eyes and hands behind many of the station's most stable systems. Taryn noticed that she no longer waited for permission before starting work. She understood what needed to be done and acted. He had stopped giving her orders and instead began asking for her opinion. They now worked like a single mind split into two people. But not everyone saw it that way. One afternoon, during a routine inspection in the Energy Control Center, Taryn and Mira were adjusting the backup power modules. The lights were dim and the room warm, filled with the quiet hum of energy cells. As they worked side by side, the junior technicians passed by and whispered to each other. That assistant of his is always with him, one said. He treats her like a queen. The other replied. Taryn heard the words but pretended not to. Mira didn't even blink. She was used to whispers. Later, as they walked back to their workspace, Mira looked at Taryn and asked, Do you hear what they say? I hear it, he replied. It doesn't bother you? She asked. No, he said simply, because I know the truth. She was quiet after that, but Taryn could tell the words had reached her heart. Even if she didn't show. The next day, the station held a team meeting in the main hall. Officers and workers from different departments gathered to discuss upcoming repairs, upgrades, and security drills. Mira sat beside Taryn, her hands folded, listening carefully. When it was time for suggestions, Taryn raised his hand. We need to reroute the coolant lines near Sector 3. There's a slow leak building pressure. The station supervisor nodded. Noted. We'll look into it. Then Mira spoke. I suggest running a scan through the relay channels in the docking zone. A pattern of brief signal loss may point to a larger system fault. There was a pause in the room. A few people looked confused. One officer even frowned. She's your assistant, right? Someone asked, shouldn't suggestions come through you? Taryn looked around the room. Her suggestion is correct, and she has the right to speak for herself. The supervisor cleared his throat. Let's just stay on process for now. After the meeting, as they walked out, Mira said, I should have let you speak for me. Taryn shook his head. No, you did right. You saw something important. You spoke. That is what matters. But the whispers grew louder in the days that followed. Some said Taryn was giving her special treatment. Others said she was using her calm voice and graceful look to win favor. Taryn was frustrated, but Mira remained calm. She continued doing her work as always, never rushing, never reacting. Then one morning, something unexpected happened. A message came from the Unity Science Division. They wanted Tarin and his team to test a new energy shield on the outer platform of the station. It was a delicate project. The shield would protect the station from high radiation during solar storms. Only the most trusted engineers were chosen. Tarin accepted the mission but gave one condition. Mira goes with me. The officer in charge blinked. You want to take your assistant into a classified test zone. She's not just my assistant. She's the reason this station is still running as it should. The officer didn't agree easily, but Tarin didn't back down. In the end, they allowed Mira to join him. The outer platform was wide and open, with strong winds and a clear view of the stars. The new energy shield glowed faintly, and its control panel stood near the edge. Tarin and Mira wore protective suits and helmets as they stepped into the test zone. The setup began well, but during calibration, the control screen started blinking. The data was wrong. Something was off. Tarin checked the system. The readings say the shield is active, but we're still exposed. Mira walked around the control panel and touched the lower cable link. The signal is split. It's sending data to a backup line that hasn't been activated yet. She opened a side panel, connected the missing link, and the shield came to life. A soft wave passed through the area, and the sensors showed complete protection. Tarin looked at her with deep respect. You did it again. Back at the station, the report was sent to the Unity Division. Tarin made sure her name was listed first. A week later, Mira received a message from the Unity Science Division. It was short and simple. We would like to meet you. When she showed it to Tarin, he smiled. They're finally starting to see you. She nodded slowly. They're starting to listen. That evening, as they sat near the growing row of calming plants in their workspace, Mira looked around. The room. I never thought I would find peace in a place like this, she said. Tarin looked at her. You didn't find it. You built it. Mira said nothing more, but she felt it, slowly. The station was changing. People were beginning to notice her work. They still called her an assistant, but the word was starting to sound different. It was no longer about her position. It was about her presence. And as for Tarin, he didn't care what they called her. He knew who she was. To him, she was a partner. To him, she was someone worth standing beside. The Unity Station had faced many technical problems in the past, but nothing compared to what was now happening at the outer barrier. A communication blackout had started 3 days ago. All contact with the small research station beyond the barrier had been lost. The outer barrier was a dangerous area filled with radiation waves, magnetic storms, and broken satellites left behind from old conflicts. Few teams went there, and only skilled crews were trusted for missions near it. When the Unity Command prepared a recovery team, they chose Tarin to lead the mission. But when Tarin received the orders, he spoke clearly. I'll go only if Mira is with me. The officer in charge raised an eyebrow. You want to take your assistant into the most dangerous part of space? She's not just an assistant, Tarin replied. She sees things I don't. We work as one team. After a short discussion, the officer agreed. Tarin and Mira were assigned to the transport ship Beacon 1, a small but strong vessel used for technical missions. The pilot was a quiet man named Rel, and the team also included 2 engineers from the station. As the ship moved toward the outer barrier, Mira stood near the observation window. The stars outside were dim, covered by clouds of cosmic dust. Strange lights moved slowly across the blackness. This place feels forgotten, she said. Tarin nodded. It is. That's why it's dangerous. The journey took 7 hours. When they reached the edge of the barrier, their screens flickered. Navigation signals became weak. Beacon 1 slowed down. We're close to the lost station, Rel said. No signals, no life signs, just static. Tarin and Mira wore protective suits and stepped into the docking tunnel. The air was thin, and the power inside the research station was nearly gone. Emergency lights gave a dim glow. The air felt cold and still. Tarin moved toward the control panel. Main systems are shut down. We'll need to bring power back online before we search. Mira moved toward a small wall device. She placed her hand near it. There's an old satellite link connected to this station. Something triggered it from outside. Could it be a trap? Tarin asked. It's not human-made, Mira said. The code is older. It might be from one of the leftover satellites. Near the debris zone, Tarin activated the backup power, and slow buzzing sounds came from the station's walls. Some systems lit up, screens turned on, showing damaged maps and broken data. Then the alarms began. A strange signal was detected just beyond the ship's reach. It was a magnetic trap left behind from the war. The signal had fooled the research station's system and locked down all outgoing messages. We need to disable it before it activates again, Mira said. Where's the control point? Tarin asked. Outside, she replied. On the old satellite spinning behind the dark ridge. It was risky. The magnetic field outside could damage their suits. But time was short. If they waited too long, the trap would pull Beacon 1 into its range and destroy it. Without waiting, Mira began preparing the connection tools. Tarin joined her. You really want to do this? He asked. I came with you because I trust you. She said, now trust me to do what I must. They exited the research station in full space suits and moved slowly toward the satellite. Using guidelines, the broken satellite turned slowly in the dark. Its surface covered in dust and burns. Mira found the main panel and opened it carefully. She connected her tools and began working. Tarin watched the screen. Signal strength is rising. We don't have much time. Mira's fingers moved quickly. She found the error loop and traced it. The satellite had been tricked by an old command code still active in its memory. She reset the control line and rewired the signal path after a few tense moments. The magnetic warning disappeared from Tarin's screen. It's done, Mira said calmly. They returned to Beacon 1. The ship's systems returned to normal. The danger was gone. Back at Unity Station, the report of their mission spread quickly. Many were shocked. Few expected Mira to play such an important role in saving the team. During the debriefing, Tarin spoke to the command panel. We didn't just fix a broken system. We found a mistake left behind from an old war. Mira's eyes saw the truth. Her skills saved us. The officers listened. Some nodded. Some remained silent. But the message was clear. Outside the meeting room, one of the young officers walked up to Mira. You're the one they call the assistant, right? Mira looked at him and said softly, I work with Tarin. He gave a short nod. Well, today you were the leader out there. Mira didn't smile, but her voice was calm. Sometimes leadership is not about position. It is about action. After that mission, no one laughed when Tarin called her a partner. The word began to carry weight. They returned to their usual work, but something had changed. The station now knew her name, not just as Tarin's assistant, but as someone who stood firm beyond the barrier. In their shared workspace, the plants had grown taller. Soft green and blue leaves waved gently near the ventilation. Mira added a new one with deep violet petals. Tarin looked at it and asked, What's this one for? Mira replied, For strength. It grows in darkness, but always reaches the light. Tarin smiled. That sounds like someone I know. She didn't answer, but her eyes said everything. She had never asked to lead, but when the time came, she did what no one else could. And from that day on, even those who once ignored her began to understand. This was not just an assistant. This was someone worth following. A quiet morning passed over Unity Station. Outside the windows, stars moved slowly, and supply ships came and went as usual. But inside the command center, something unusual had arrived. It was a sealed message from the Unity Council on the central planet of the system. The highest decision-makers of the galaxy had read the report from the Outer Barrier mission. They wanted to meet the team. The message was addressed to Engineer Tarin. It invited him to the Unity Summit to speak about safety in dangerous sectors. The message also said nothing about Mira. When Mira saw the message on Tarin's desk, she stayed silent. She turned and began her usual checks on the system panels. But Tarin saw the look in her eyes. Calm, yes, but quiet in a different way. She had expected this. She wasn't surprised, but he knew it still hurt. He walked over and placed the datapad gently on the table beside her. "I'm not going," he said. She paused, then looked at him. "Why?" "Because they called it our mission." "But only name me," Taring replied. "That's not right." She lowered her eyes. "You led the mission. You deserve it." "No," he said, his voice firm. "We stood side by side out there. If your name isn't welcome in their halls, then neither is mine." For a while, she said nothing. The only sound was the soft hum of the machines around them. Then Mira spoke. "You always treat me as an equal, Taring. I see it. I feel it. But not everyone thinks as you do. Then we'll help them see." He said. The next day, Taring sent a reply to the Unity Council. He thanked them for the invitation, but added a message at the end. The mission at the outer barrier succeeded because of the work of engineer Mira of Vela. If she is not recognized as part of the team, I will not attend. The council took 2 days to respond. Then another message came. This time it was addressed to both Taring and Mira. They were invited to speak together. When they arrived at the Unity Summit, the room was full of leaders from across the galaxy. Tall humans in gold uniforms, scholars from long-lived species, and even mechanical minds stood together. Everyone turned to look as Taring and Mira entered. Many had heard of Mira now. Few had seen her. She walked with calm steps, wearing a soft gray uniform and a teal sash across her shoulder. Her face was calm, her posture straight. She did not speak loudly. She did not carry signs of rank, yet she carried something no title could give. Presence. Taring spoke first. He explained the mission, the hidden satellite, and the system error. Then he stepped aside and invited Mira to speak. She walked to the center of the room, looked at the council members, and began. I am not from a loud world," she said. "On Vela, we learn to listen more than we speak. But listening has taught me that silence can be powerful." She paused, then continued. "When systems fail, it is not always the largest wires that cause the fault. Often, it is the smallest switch or the quietest signal. People are the same. You must look closely to understand true value." Some in the room leaned forward. Others simply listened, not expecting such simple words to carry so much truth. I was called an assistant. I didn't correct it. I let my work speak. And one man chose to see me as more than a helper. He chose to stand beside me when others would have walked ahead. She turned to Taring for a moment, then back to the room. "I do not seek position. I only ask that we build systems where every part is respected, where voice and value are not decided by species or rank, but by action." The room was silent when she finished. Then, one by one, leaders began to nod. After the summit, the council called both Mira and Taring into a private chamber. An older council member with silver bands on his sleeves spoke to them. "Engineer Mira," he said, "you have reminded us of something we often forget. We make laws and plans, but we forget to listen to the quiet ones who keep the systems running." Mira stood still, waiting. "You have been offered a seat on the Unity Research Board," the elder said. "Will you accept?" Mira turned slightly and looked at Taring. "I will accept," she said, "if I may serve beside Engineer Taring." The council was silent for a moment. Then they agreed. That night, back on Unity Station, Mira stood near the calming plants in their shared workspace. Taring joined her, holding 2 cups of warm drink. "You'll be sitting on the research board now," he said. "People will call you all kinds of new titles." "I don't need a title," she said. "I only need to keep working with people who see clearly." Taring raised his cup. To clear eyes and quiet minds, Mira raised hers. And to those who choose to listen, the plants around them swayed gently as the air moved. The room felt peaceful. She was still the same Mira, calm, steady, and kind. But now, the galaxy had begun to see what Taring saw from the very beginning. She was not a shadow behind someone else's name. She was a leader, a thinker, and a voice that deserved to be heard. Weeks passed after the Unity Summit, but the memory of Mira's quiet, powerful words still remained. Her speech had been shared across the Unity systems. It was translated into many languages and even taught in learning centers on smaller planets. People had started talking differently. Officers began listening to junior workers more carefully. Systems were checked with new eyes. Even the word assistant was being used with more care and respect. But Mira did not change her habits. She still arrived early. She still carried her simple tools and worked quietly beside Tarin. Her new position on the Unity Research Board had not turned her into someone distant. She stayed close to the work, close to the systems, and close to the people who kept them running. One morning, a message came from the Unity Council again. This time, it was for something even bigger. Mira had been invited to speak at the new Systems Summit, a rare event held once every 10 years. Leaders, builders, and thinkers from across the galaxy would attend. They would discuss the future of space exploration, peace, and cooperation. Tarin read the message over Mira's shoulder. "They want you to give the opening speech," he said. Mira looked at the message quietly. "Why me?" "Because your words opened something in people," he said. "You didn't speak loudly. You just spoke truth." Mira accepted the invitation. But as the day of the summit came closer, many on Unity Station grew curious. Some officers whispered, "She's just a quiet worker. What will she say to the whole galaxy?" Others said, "She doesn't even wear a command badge." But those who had worked beside her knew better. They remembered the systems she fixed, the lives she protected, and the respect she gave to everyone around her. On the day of the summit, the hall was filled with thousands of beings. The stage was wide and bright, standing under a tall ceiling. Shaped like a rising sun, flags from every member planet waved gently in the air. Tarin sat in the front row, his hands resting on his lap. He watched as Mira walked onto the stage. She wore the same teal sash from the Unity Summit and a plain white suit from Vela. She stood at the center and looked across the room. Her presence calmed the space. Then she began to speak. "When I first came to Unity Station, I was called an assistant. People assumed I was there only to follow orders, to stay quiet, and to stand in the background. No one moved. The room had fallen still. I did not argue with them. I simply worked. I did not try to be noticed. I tried to be useful. I tried to understand the systems and the people around me. And over time, someone noticed, not because I demanded it, but because he chose to see." She paused for a moment. Her eyes moved across the room, meeting the gaze of strangers from different worlds. "We often build large ships, tall towers, and powerful machines, but the future of this galaxy is not only built with metal and energy, it is built with respect, with listening, with trust between people who look different, speak differently, and come from far places." Tarin watched her with quiet pride. He remembered the first time he had seen her calm, focused, silent. He had known even then that she was not ordinary. Mira continued, "When people feel seen, they rise. When they are respected, they give more than what is expected. When they are trusted, they do not just work, they build." She lifted her hand slowly and placed it over her heart. "I am not a queen. I am not a leader in the way you define leadership. I am just a worker who was treated with kindness, and that kindness helped me grow. Imagine what this galaxy could become if we offered that same care to every voice, every hand, and every heart." There was no sound in the hall. Then a soft clap began. It grew louder and louder until the whole room stood in respect. The next day, her words were broadcast across every major colony. Her name appeared on Unity News, not as an assistant, but as a voice of wisdom. Back on Unity Station, when she returned, the station manager met her at the airlock. "We've created a new role," he said, "Systems Integration Advisor. We want you to lead." Mira replied with her usual calm voice, "Only if I can still work in the repair bays. That's where I belong." The manager smiled. "As you wish." Later, Mira and Tarin returned to their shared workspace. The calming plants had grown tall now, with soft colors and wide leaves. Mira added a new one, this one with small golden buds. Tarin asked, "What does this one mean?" She replied, "It means honor." He smiled. "It suits this place." As they sat together, Workers passed by the open door. They no longer saw Mira as someone standing behind Tarin. They saw her as a guide, a voice, a person who had helped shape the direction of their future. And though some still called her assistant, out of habit, the word now meant something different. It meant someone strong, someone wise, someone worth listening to. Tarin looked at her and said quietly, "I didn't treat you like a queen to be kind. I treated you like a queen, because that's what you are." Mira looked at him and answered, "And you were the only one who saw it from the beginning." 1 year had passed since Mira gave her speech at the New Systems Summit. Her words had reached every corner of the galaxy. She became a symbol of quiet leadership and respect for every worker. No matter their background, she did not seek attention. Yet her name had spread further than she ever imagined. Tarin and Mira continued their work on Unity Station. Every day, they worked side by side like before. But things had changed. Mira now advised on system designs for planets in the Outer Rim. She trained new engineers. She helped build strong teams across different worlds. Despite all this, she never left the repair bays for long. She still helped carry tools. She still listened to every junior worker as if their thoughts mattered. And to her, they truly did. One morning, a message came from the Unity Council once again. This time, it was something very different. The Council had approved a project that Mira and Tarin had submitted months ago. It was a plan to build a new kind of space station, one designed not just for science and defense, but also for teaching, growing, and uniting people. The Council wanted them to lead the project together. The station would be built near a quiet star, close to peaceful colonies. It would be called Horizon Station. Tarin looked at the plan with a spark in his eyes. "This is more than a station," he said. "It's a chance to build something the right way." Mira nodded. "Yes, a place where titles don't decide respect, where every voice is heard." Soon, they left Unity Station and traveled to the construction site. The first time they saw the wide-open framework of Horizon Station, it was just beams, platforms, and glowing markers floating in space. But in Mira's eyes, it was already alive. Over the next months, they worked harder than ever. Mira met with workers from over 20 different planets. She listened to the ideas of young builders, respected the concerns of senior engineers, and included the thoughts of support teams and caretakers. Tarin handled the main systems design. He trusted Mira to shape the human part, the structure of teams, the way people worked together, and how voices were shared in meetings and decisions. Together, they created something special. Horizon Station was not just strong on the outside, it was peaceful on the inside. The halls were quiet and welcoming. Gardens grew near study rooms. Work areas were open, with tools shared equally. There were no private offices for high-rank leaders. Every person had the same open space, the same seat, the same respect. When the station was completed, a small ceremony was held. It was not loud or grand. It was quiet and warm, just like Mira. During the opening, a young student from a colony asked Mira a question. "Why did you build the station like this?" the girl asked. Mira smiled gently and replied, "Because someone once saw value in me when others did not. He treated me with care and honor. I wanted to build a place where everyone is treated like that." The girl nodded slowly. "You sound like a queen," she said. Mira looked at Tarin, who stood nearby. He smiled, remembering the many times he had said something similar. "I'm just a worker," Mira replied. "But maybe, in a good place, every worker can feel like something more." Years passed on Horizon Station. It became a learning center, a place of peace and progress. People from all over the galaxy came there not just to study machines, but to learn about cooperation and respect. Mira's name was spoken in many rooms, but she never tried to become more famous. She continued helping with repairs. She still grew small plants near the quiet corners of the station. One day, as she sat in the garden looking out at the stars, Tarin joined her. They sat in silence for a while, just watching the small lights pass by. "Do you remember the first time we worked together?" Tarin asked. "Yes," she said softly. "You gave me the main console to fix, You fixed it better than I ever. Good, he said with a grin. They both laughed quietly. You changed how I was seen, Mira said. And you didn't do it with power or force. You did it with kindness. You earned it, Tarin said. I only gave others a chance to see what I already knew. Mira looked out into the deep sky. I wonder how many others are still waiting to be seen. Tarin nodded. Then we keep building. Not just stations. We build trust. We build understanding. She smiled. And we build it together. Later, a visitor to Horizon Station asked, a historian, who was Mira? Was she a leader, a queen? The historian replied, she never took a throne, never wore a crown, but she led with honesty and respect. She was called an assistant. He treated her like a queen. And in time, the galaxy followed.